Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. Today I'm taking another stab at painting one of the miniatures from Masters of the Universe Battleground by Archon Studio, and as you can see, it's the big man himself, He-Man. Once again I'm going to be drawing colour inspiration mainly from the Filmation series, but I'm not going to worry too much about getting things exact. Fortunately, He-Man isn't a particularly complicated miniature. As long as you can get a decent result on the skin, you're 70% of the way there. So I've started by spray undercoating with Chaos Black. I could have gone for a white undercoat and that would have worked fine, but I've gone with black to try and keep the skin tone a little darker and tanned. And the skin is what we're going to start with because there's more skin than anything else. We're going to use Cadian flesh tone, we're going to thin it down so we can get a nice smooth coverage. And we don't need to be too careful here as all of the clothing will get painted later. We just need to make sure we get the skin completely covered. You will find that over the black this is going to take 2 coats even if you don't thin the paint too much. Once that's completely dry we're going to switch to Agrax Earthshade, naturally, and we're going to put a healthy coat of this all over the skin. This is really going to darken down the skin tone and make He-Man look tanned. And really, you could leave the skin at that and you have a decent tabletop quality result. The wonders of modern paints with a really good quality miniature like this mean it really is pretty easy to get something halfway decent. But we are going to highlight the skin a bit by going back to Cadian flesh tone. We're going to keep this thin and build up the highlights with a couple of coats. Really bring out the definition of the muscles. With that done we can move on to the loincloth and boots. In the cartoon they are an orangey brown colour, so I'm going to approximate that with a roughly 50-50 mix of fur brown from Army Painter with Wild Rider red from Citadel. We just need 1 coat of this over the boots and furs, making sure we don't accidentally get it over the skin areas. I'm actually quite happy with this colour, but we do still need to shade and highlight it, so when it's completely dry we can switch to our washes. For this, I'm going to use Agrax Earthshade, but I'm going to mix in some Fugan Orange, around 2:1. Then we just apply this carefully over our brown furs. You want the washes to go right up to where the furs touch the skin, without going onto the skin itself. This is quite an orange shade, and He-Man is tanned, not fake tanned. If you do cover the skin, use a clean wet brush to try to remove all the shade immediately. You may then need to touch up the skin with some Cadian flesh tone. Once that shade is dry we will go back to our fur brown and Wild Rider mix just to do a quick highlight. We're going to keep the paint thin and use a small brush just to pick out the raised details. Next we want to do the belt and the bracers. When I started painting Battleground I said I was going to avoid using a lot of metallic paint to try to keep more of a look of the Filmation series and the majority of the toys. Of course I immediately went back on that when I painted Orko and gave him a metallic wand. However, I do really want to keep metallics to a minimum. That being said, He-Man's belt is a sort of orange on the toy and in the animated series, and I didn't think that would look great, so I'm going to use Balthazar Gold here, which is quite a dark coppery metallic gold. I'm going to thin it down and apply 1 coat to the belt and bracers, being careful not to get the paint anywhere else. Then, when it's dry, I'm going to switch to Seraphim Sepia and wash over those gold areas. This will provide the shading, but will also tone down the metallic colour, and I'm just going to leave it at that without doing any additional highlighting. Then we need to switch to his chest armour and weapons. On the original toy his sword, shield and chest piece were all the same colour grey, but in the Filmation series the chest piece was a darker grey, sometimes even a slightly blue grey. So I'm going to use 2 different grey shades here. First we're going to use Dawnstone. This is for the chest piece and the straps on the shield. Again we are thinning the paint and we are going to apply it carefully. Even thinned 1 coat should be enough here, but you can do 2 if you feel you need it. The main focus here should be to keep the paint smooth and to keep the lines where the armour meets the skin as neat and straight as possible. We are switching to Evil Sunz Scarlet now. We're going to thin this down a little so we can put it on smoothly with good control. You can use a little Lamian medium if you want to. And we're applying this to the insignia on the chest plate and the recessed areas of the shield. You will need 2 coats for this to get a really strong coverage. Next we are using Nuln Oil and we're going to apply this to the shield straps and the chest piece. The Nuln Oil will shade any recesses but also help to make a neater line around the chest armour. Then when that's dry, I'm just going to go back to Dawnstone and do a little edge highlighting to brighten that chest piece up again. I don't really want anything to be too dark on this miniature. We will then switch back to Evil Sun Scarlet, and we're going to use that just to tidy up the insignia on the chest piece. With that done, we can do the grey on the shield and the Sword of Power. For this, we're going to use Administratum Grey, which is lighter than Dawnstone. Administratum doesn't cover very well, so you're going to need a few coats of this. Of course, if you'd rather, you could just use a metallic silver instead. While that's drying, we're going to paint He-Man's hair. For this, we are going to put down a solid base of Balor Brown, which is a pretty good colour to start from for He-Man's strawberry blonde hair. You will need 2 coats though. When that's completely dry, we're going to put some Seraphim Sepia on the hair. This will shade it without darkening it down too much. But even so, after that I am going to go back to the Balor Brown and use it just to pick out the most raised parts of the hair, including the tips. If you want to, you can really build up those layers and make He-Man into a real Samson. But that will do for me. Next, I want to get a little shading on the sword and shield, as they do look just a bit too much like toys right now. I'm using Nuln Oil Gloss. Once I spray varnish the miniature with matte varnish, the gloss won't be glossy anymore, but the gloss does seem slightly richer to me, and I wanted to see how it looked on these weapons. Once again, we need to wait for that to dry, so I'm going to take this chance to slap a coat of Xandri dust on the base. I'm not worrying about thinning this, I'm just getting down a rough coat over this stony texture. Then I can go back to the weapons and use some thinned down Administratum Grey to go back over the raised areas and tidy up all the flat surfaces. And I'm pretty happy with that. The shield almost has a sort of poor man's cell shaded effect, and I like the look of the sword. I'm happy I decided not to go the metallic route. However, we are not quite done yet. We need to go back to Agrak's Earthshade and put a heavy wash on the base to bring out all those lovely details. When that's completely dry, we're going to go back to Xandri Dust to do some highlighting, and if you want to, you can gradually add in some Screaming Skull and build up layers of brighter colouring. With that done, all that's left is to paint the front arc arrow on the front of the base with black, and then finish off the rim of the base using Steel Legion Drab. And we're done! And I have to say, I'm so pleased with the end result. I'm happy with the colours and the standard of the paint job. I love Masters of the Universe, and it was really important for me to paint He-Man to a standard I was happy with. And I've done that. It's by no means a professional quality finish, but it's a notch or 2 above a tabletop standard, and that's fine by me. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you to all of the members of the Always Bored Never Boring Members Club who are waiting patiently for me to start the painting projects they voted on for me to do next, and thank you everyone for taking their valuable time to listen to me today. If you like the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, and hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone, bye bye.